today.
It's a red, white, support the blue flashback weekend. Flashing back to our favorite interviews with those that have put their lives on the line for their fellow citizens.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Brueski.
That it is. We are talking with Detective Jason Howe today about the systems that exist or don't, from law enforcement agency to law enforcement agency, jurisdiction to jurisdiction, how they work together, how sometimes they don't work together, and how things can be improved so we don't see situations like we've seen with the Lori Vallow Daybell case, where kids can literally be missing for nearly half a year before someone says, you need to physically produce these kids or we're going to arrest you. It was rather ridiculous how long that went on for. From the outside looking in, I think that's a big question many people have. You had people screaming, saying, there's something wrong here. These kids are missing. These two are out gallivanting to Hawaii. Why haven't they been arrested or investigated further? And I guess that's my question to you. You're in that field. What went wrong here, or what was working as it should, but certainly needs some improvement so this sort of thing doesn't happen?
Yeah, well, I think they did a decent job in putting this case together. The largest issues we had here, or the greatest issues, were probably the jurisdictional issues. You know, you're doing a investigation that spans from the Southwest to Idaho to Hawaii. And when you're trying to work across so many jurisdictions, that's where you kind of run into trouble. As far as the Child Protective Services aspect of this, you know, they were looking for these children. They were trying to get cooperation from Lori, and she just wasn't cooperating. So those things take some time, especially when you're not getting the assistance from the parents. There was also some deception at play in that, whether the kids were given to somebody else or were in the custody of somebody else. So those things make it kind of difficult. I think the last straw was when, you know, the court order went into effect and she was due to produce the children. And then when they didn't get produced, that was the avenue that the authorities could go in and make an apprehension in the matter. So I think the biggest factor here was jurisdictional issues.
Yeah, I mean, I fully believe the police wanted to do everything they could. It's just what's the barrier here, and what are the things that need to be examined? Because we obviously see Lori Daybell under this microscope, and we can look at every little thing. But, you know, these sort of things where children are missing, they go on every single day all throughout our country. And I can only imagine the ones that don't have a spotlight on them, how difficult that can be as well. Let's talk about the jurisdictional issues that they would have run into, because yes, we are talking not only different counties, different cities, and things of that nature. We're talking different states across the U.S., all the way to Hawaii, to Idaho, to Arizona, and such. When you have children that are missing, why did it in this case take so long? What sort of bureaucratic things were actually holding up that process of? Everyone knows this woman's children are missing. She's not helping. She's dragging her feet. Why then does it still take that long? I mean, it seems like her dragging her feet was just kind of allowed. It's like, well, she's not going to do it. We can't cooperate here. And now all these months later, we finally discover that they're dead. What could have prevented that and that slowdown?
I think to get the reports out there to all the entities that might be involved.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people in the public sector workforce that maybe don't want to work as hard as they could. And this is my opinion.
Yeah.
But, you know, they'd rather pass the buck. But from a family point of view, from the grandparents' point of view, who were trying to locate these children and report them missing, you know, you need to contact everybody. I know you can't travel to Hawaii necessarily. That doesn't make it very convenient, but get on the telephone, talk to the Child Protective Services in Hawaii, talk to the Child Protective Services in the county of Idaho, talk to Child Protective Services in the other states where the children would have resided. But not only that, you also have to talk to the law enforcement authorities. You know, you kind of have two separate investigations going on. You have a child protective services investigation, which is mainly geared in a lot of jurisdictions to the civil aspect of making sure the welfare of the children are being met. But then you also have these criminal allegations that could be at play, and you have a criminal investigation that the law enforcement authorities are going to handle. So you need to make sure you involve as many of the authorities as you can, and you may run into pushback from people that maybe aren't working as hard as they should. But it's just getting the contacts made and making sure people are doing their jobs.
And that's the impossible thing, I think, sometimes, to make sure people are doing their jobs, because, a lot of times, I tend to run on the aspect or the mindset of, okay, you guys, if I'm talking to the police, you guys are the police. You guys know how to do your job. I'm not here to tell you how to do your job because I don't know how to do your job. And y'all, if we're hopefully talking to good, responsible people, they are doing their job, as in any industry or any sort of life that anyone is living or career path. Is it too muddled of water, though? Because like you just said, there's these people over here doing this investigation. There's that people over here doing that investigation. Should there be more of a center point when there's something like this going on? Like, okay, there is a missing child or missing children here. Center point is the one that's going to help communicate to all of these various agencies that are working it. But at the end of the day, things then don't get, dropped and the ball doesn't get dropped, and they're able to focus on the actual goal of finding the missing children, because it just seems like the waters got so muddy. Kay and Larry Woodcock were calling around. They were calling all the time about having somebody look into this. And when officers finally did get to Lori Daybell, or Lori Vallow at the time, she just said, oh, they're with this friend, they're with that friend. And they just took her word for it. Is that okay? Is that policy? Is that how it is, where if the parents do have an alibi, you don't look any further? And I'm curious as to why it took so long for that to actually be looked into.
So I think when you talk about policy, that's a difficult part, because it's hard to know unless you research what the policy is at each particular agency or organization. They vary from state to state, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, local government, state government. So, talking about what is policy, is difficult in that particular area unless you research it. Now, I will say from a practical stance, it probably should suffice that someone would want to lay eyes on these children, would want to speak to the children in person. There's a lot of deception in the world, and just taking someone's word for that the children are okay, it's probably the easy way out. From a practical aspect and from an investigative aspect, if this was my case, I would want to see the children. I would want to speak to the children myself.
And that's the thing that I think everyone is baffled by, is that it took literally 5 months where she didn't produce the children, when they finally said, look, you have to produce these kids, or we're going to investigate this even further. Why did it take 5 months for that to take place? Why wouldn't that have been after a couple weeks, when you have grandparents screaming, these kids are missing, these people are dangerous, they're lying to you? And yes, I know there's multiple states involved here, but we have systems that seem to work very fast and very quickly if we need them to, like the Amber Alerts and such. But with something like this, if the parents say, no, they're fine, they're good, and they're the ones that are not saying the kid's missing, everyone seems to be able to kick and scream a lot, but nothing seems to be able to be done because of all the red tape from jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
Yeah, there is some of that. And unfortunately, when you travel, if I was following up on a case, there are policies that are in place for us to justify our travel. So I would have to, get approval. I would have to, have a proposed budget for having to travel to Idaho to investigate, myself. Normally in a case like that, we'd coordinate with the other authorities over the telephone.
Sure.
But again, that can be difficult because you need to make sure you're speaking to somebody that's going to be active in the investigation. You want to coordinate, let them know, the reason for the children being missing, how important it is. When you're dealing with caseloads and stuff, you really have to have someone that's calling every other day or every 2 days to let the authorities know just how important this case is. When you're dealing with a 10, 15, 20 caseload, you need to prioritize those cases. And the more people that are calling looking for these children, the higher the priority I think it should be given. So it's always helpful just to be in contact with them. Again, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, you have to be organized. You have to be able to network and, basically get on the same page. We have tools available. There are databases out there that help us coordinate cases. We can get on video calls now. We can do Zoom meetings. But the authorities have to put this to use, and they have to actually utilize the technology available.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition
This is the Hidden Killers podcast.
with Tony Brueski.
Jason Howe, detective in North Carolina. Thank you so much for your insight. I want to talk a little bit more about this and dig a little bit deeper from your perspective and understand it even better. So we'll have another conversation with Jason here in just a little bit. Press subscribe so you don't miss that. My name is Tony Brueski. You can follow us wherever you download podcasts. Please do follow and subscribe. You can get an ad-free experience if you become a premium subscriber through Apple Podcasts. Check that out. Tony Brueski, stay with us.